Are you still creating applications in Excel that look like they're from the 1990s? Well, that's about to change today. I'm going to show you how you can create a modern, beautiful, and functional application in Excel, complete with slide-out menu, one-click dashboard, a full CRM, and even a scheduler. It's going to be an incredible training. I cannot wait. So let's get started. All right, thank you so much for joining me. I'm super excited to have you here. I'm going to be sharing with you this incredible modern CRM application that I just built that's going to allow you to have a one-click dashboard. You're going to be able to add, update, edit clients, add, update, and edit meetings. You'll have a full scheduler along with full navigation. And also we have an admin that is fully customizable. I'm going to be sharing all of that with you today. This template is absolutely free. All you need to do is click the link down below, look for the description if you're on YouTube, and that's under the word download. That, of course, will get you this template, or if you're on my website, look for the button that says download, and we'll get this sent right over to you. This is a template, of course, but if you're looking for more of a completed application, please check out my Ultimate CRM. This particular application is much larger. It has full customer management, attachments, documents, contacts. It has appointment manager. And of course, it's got full email automation and a whole lot more. That is the Ultimate CRM application. That is a fully completed application that I'm making available to you. So make sure you click the link down below and look for that. All right, so we're going to get started on this application. If you're just looking to use this modern CRM application and you don't really want to know how I built it, no problem. I've got you covered. I'll be going over how to use this starting. If you're interested to see how I built this and how I made it and some of the code, along with some of the features and how we were able to connect it, I'll be going over what I did so you can get into it and customize yourself, as well as learn some of the code, some of the tips, tricks, and techniques that I use to make this application. It is a template that is fully functional, it is open, and it is available to you. All right, so we're going to get started on this right now. It does come with a collapsible menu. Now, I just had a VBA basic training that I'll put the link down below. It covers this collapsible menu in detail, so I don't want to cover that. I've got a training just on that collapsible menu, and it looks just like this. In fact, that was the inspiration for this training. So we have a dashboard here that puts everything together. We've got the current month's projects. We've got the current day's meetings that are scheduled. And I've also got client progress as far as how many projects are in progress and the clients by types. We've got a mini dashboard. I've got a list of upcoming meetings here and a list of recent client projects. So that is just basically available for viewing so that we get a quick view of where we are as far as our clients, the projects, and the meetings that are associated. On the clients, what we do is we have a full feature client list here. So all the clients here, it can be one click, we'll just update it. We can actually create a search by, meaning if we want to look for clients, if I want to look by type or by client name, I can do that. For example, if I want to just search for individuals, I can do that. And it's going to quickly revert only to those client types called individual. If I want to clear it out, I just click delete and it's going to do that. Likewise, I can search by name. So if I'm looking for Sarah and I put in Sarah here and I put also in the client name, that is going to return Sarah. So we can quickly find Sarah. And so this is a quick search. If I make a selection on a single client, it is that client that is going to load in these fields here. So we see each client has individual information. We have the type. We can set the different types of clients. That's fully customizable. We can put in a phone, the status of that project, the date of that, and also the project cost, what it cost us, and along with the amount that we billed and some notes. So each individual client has a number of fields. Of course, you can expand on that. We can add a new client. We can select an existing and save or update that. We can schedule a meeting with that client. It's going to go over to the meetings. And we can also delete the client. So we have multiple features on this individual client. The cool thing is this dynamic search, because we can search by pretty much anything. And we can also, for example, if we want a cost, like a project cost, I can search for project costs that are greater than 1,000. And that's going to filter just those clients that have projects greater than 1,000 or even less than 1,000. We can do that as well. So we see we only have 3 projects less than 1,000. So we have a lot of abilities to search. Also, we have meetings. Now, meetings we can do exactly like the clients. We can select on an individual meeting. It's going to load the details of that meeting. We can add a new meeting, which is going to clear that. We'll put in the name of the meeting. We were going to select the individual client here, and we will then put in a meeting date. So if I put in today's date, 3/25, and also if I put in the meeting time, we can select from a drop-down list of meeting times, or we can simply start to enter. I can put that. And then we would put the duration of the meeting. So if it's a 1-hour meeting, I can do that. And we can also set a type for the meeting. So that's kind of handy. And then just some test notes. Once we've added all our information, we simply just click Save and Update, and that is going to save the meeting, and it's then going to be available inside this list here. Also, it's going to show up on the schedule. So if we move over to the schedule on 3/25, we are then going to see that meeting. So we see it right here. It's a little bit overlapped with another meeting, but we can see it. So we have a 3:30 meeting for Fretters. Here's our scheduling screen. We can navigate for the previous week or the next week. I don't think I have any ones. So next week I've got a few, and we can click on the current week. So we've got all of these meetings set up. Each individual meeting has a different color. That is going to be based on the meeting type. Notice inside the admin, we can set individual meeting types, and we can set individual colors for those meeting types. So that is where we get the colors from. So it's kind of handy. If I want to select on a meeting, let's say this appointment by Fred Fretters, I see that it's an issue. So I'm going to set it for 6 p.m. I'm just going to click Edit Meeting. It's going to take me right to that. So I can go back to that meeting, and then I can just set it for a later time. If I can just enter 6, it's going to give me those options, and I'll set it for 6:30. When I save and update that and go back to the schedule, we see that it's now set for 6:30. So it's very dynamic in the way that we use this schedule. And so we can also, let's see, I think I covered everything on the schedule. If we want to schedule a new meeting, I can just click here, and it's going to go back to the meeting with all of the fields available to enter. So that's the schedule. So those are the 5 different buttons that we have on our week view scheduling. It is fully dynamic, this particular application. Notice we're starting on Monday and we're starting at 8 a.m. We may want to change that. We can set inside the admin where our customizations are going to take. Maybe I want to set our start date on a Sunday, and I want to set it a little bit earlier, so I'm going to set it for 6 a.m. I can do just that. And I can also reset the intervals if I want to. So here what we're going to do, in fact, I'll update that. I'll add a data validation on that. Let's do that right now while we're at it before I forget. Data validations, I'm going to change that to a list, and I also have equals duration. So I've got a named range called durations. And there we go. So now we see we have a drop-down list. So we can change it to 1-hour intervals if we want to. That can be also handy. So when I go ahead and go back to the schedule, we see that it now starts on a Sunday. It now starts at 6 a.m. So we've now updated this, and we also have every single hour, 6, 7, 8. So the intervals have also changed. So that can be very handy because it automatically updates that. But we can also go back to the admin and we can change it to 30 minutes. In fact, I'll change these durations to actually 15 minutes so that you can get that handy. To get 15 minutes, we simply do equals 1 divided by 24 hours in a day, divided by 4. So that's going to get us that 15-minute interval. And then we just simply need to add that onto it. So we can say equals this plus, and we can go ahead and view the formula bar. So let's take a look at that in case you want to get inside. We can click on the view here, and then we take a look at the formula bar. And so we can actually update our intervals here, and it's going to add the interval up. So we can set the time based on the interval. Now we have 15 minutes, and it's automatically going to update. Great, so we've updated it. If we go back to the schedule, we'll see those 15-minute increments, and things are kind of helpful. So we get an idea that it is fully customizable. We have weekdays here, that's a fixed list. We also have project status here. We have individual client types, which we can customize. We have the meeting types. We have the individual times. If you don't want these times, you can customize this list. And we have the duration. So in the admin screen, it is very dynamic. So that's kind of a rundown of this application. If you want more space, we can minimize it or maximize the menu, shrink or grow it. And it's still fully functional, even though we're using the minimalist menu here, which is kind of helpful. All right, so now that we kind of understand a roundabout view of that, let's get into a little bit of how I made this. Once again, if you want to learn how to create this slide out menu, I have a very specific video that I just made last week on it. I will put the link down below so that you can watch a dedicated video just on this menu. But essentially, we have 5 different items here in the menu, and we have a single screen that is handling it all. If I were to select on the headings, and then you get an idea of everything that we've created. So I'm going to go to the admin. And then what I'm going to do is we see that we have columns. If I were to right click and unhide these columns, we would see that we now have the entire sections all lit out. So we have an admin, which is columns A and B. We first have our dashboard. Now keep that in mind that there's shapes that are hidden along that. We have some hidden data in our client. So here's our client section. The next is our meeting section and our scheduling here without the scheduling shapes, and our admin. So we have all of the sections here that are actually laid out on one single sheet. That way we can have a single dedicated menu. Then simply the job of the macros is simply to hide and show columns, and then hide and show the individual shapes. For example, the dashboard, we've got shapes. For every section, we have individual shapes. So we notice that there's no shapes or anything around this, but that is fine. So we get an idea of exactly how. When I select on any menu item, the dashboard, it is going to hide it, and it's going to show this shape. We see that this is called the dashboard group. That's the name of the shape. This is called the shapes that are here. They've been all grouped together, including the buttons, the frame, and everything else. And that's include the client group and meetings schedule likewise. So each individual section has its own individual shape group. Now you'll notice that things look a little bit different here. In Excel, we only have square cells. So how do we get this round look? Well, in actuality, what we have is a shape that's surrounding. So if I move this, if I select inside that group, you're going to see that that's a shape, and it's shaped around. Now, it's kind of nice because I can put that around and give it a nice look and feel. And also, when we decide we want to protect this, users will not be able to select on any of the shapes. They'll only be able to select on the cells, so we don't have to worry about after protecting them. And basically what we would do with that, let's go ahead and pull this down here. And what I want to show you is inside the view. If I were to protect this, the view wouldn't be there. We could remove the formula bar, we could remove the headings, and then inside the review, we would simply protect it. And when we do that, we would not want the user to be able to edit any objects. We'd click OK. Now the user cannot select any shapes here. I can't select any shapes. I can't select the borders. I can only select the individual cells. So it comes in handy. For our purposes, we will unprotect it. So we can see now we can select on the shapes. So when you want to turn this into a user application to just use it and not to code it, you will want to protect it and protect all of these individual shapes. So protection is a very important part of this, but these rounded rectangle shapes give it that modern look. So we're able to do that. We've created buttons here, the individual buttons. I've got a rounded rectangle corner here for this one. And we also have that on the right and left. The center are simply rectangle shapes for our buttons. And then I've added icons along the way. So that's kind of the framework of these individual forms. Each one of these forms has a rectangular shape around it that has those rounded borders. So that is how we get a nice modern look to our individual forms. As far as the data is concerned, it's very simple in this particular application. It's just made up of 2 databases. We have a client database, and that client database is made up of an ID, name type, and basically everything you can see here. We also have a project cost and a project amount, so we can build out profit and loss reports. In fact, I might be doing that for our Patreon members. I'll be adding to this next week. So make sure you get in your ideas and suggestions of what else you want to see inside this application. I'll be putting all those new features into it and creating a brand new video available next week on Patreon. So make sure you join the gold or silver membership. So we're here in the client database, and we also have a meeting database where our meetings are handled with an ID, a name, client name, a date, time, duration, type, and notes. So we have everything available there. And also, as you see inside these individual database, I have a unique list of search bys. So we see that this is called client search by. This is a list of all the fields that they can search by. This might look a little familiar because this is the same drop down list that we have here available called search by. So I use this data validation. Likewise, inside the meetings, I have something very similar. If we take a look inside the meeting, we have a meeting search by drop-down list. That is going to be available for our meetings so that we can search by any single one. Also, if we take a look inside the select client, we see that we have a drop-down list that's been sorted. That's going to come directly from our client database here. Every single time that we save or update a client, we want to make sure to update this list. This is a unique list of sorted client names. And anytime we make a change, or even when we delete a client, we want to make sure that this name list always gets updated. And if we take a look inside our named range, we can see that we've created a dynamic named range. So we're going to go into the formulas, name manager, and we're going to see this one here called client names sorted. Is going to be a dynamic named range for all of those lists. So we want this list updated every time we make any type of a change to a client. It is that client names sorted that is the same drop-down list data validation for here. So if we take a look inside the data tab and we go to data validation, we're going to see that same list available, and we see that it is connected. So we're using that list, and of course a macro is going to make sure that that is updated. That is also a required field for meetings. So along with the client database and the search by, we have the unique lists, and we also have some additional information for our results. This is for our dashboard. We also have our client list. So this is a client list. If we take a look inside our CRM, we have a list of clients. We see that we have the client name and we have the type, but we don't see that ID. If we take a look back here, we see that there's three: ID, name, and type. So where is that other one? That ID is actually in column O. If we were to take column O and expand it, we would see it here. Now, if you don't want to see the numbers at all, you can simply change the format. We can go into the home, we can go into more number formats, and because they're only numbers, we'll go into the custom and we'll replace it with 2 semicolons. This will ensure that those numbers are hidden. So if you decide you want to show this column, you can still show it, but you do not see those client IDs. Those client IDs are important because when I make a selection on an individual client, I need to know what client to load here. Those IDs are stored in our admin section. Now, our admin section is broken up into 4 different sections. We have our client information here, our client ID, the row that's associated with that client in the database, and the next client ID. So if we take a look and we select another client, we see that we have the client ID loading and the row is associated. So we see David Lee is on row 5. If we were to take our database and we were to scroll over to the left and we look at row 5, we see that David Lee is client ID number 2 and he's on row 5. And that's exactly what this shows. We also see the next client ID using the max formula. That's going to tell us the next available ID. If we use Shift Control down arrow, we're going to go all the way down. We see the last one is 49. And that tells us the next one is going to be 50. So that is correct. So this is our client information. This helps us load our individual clients. If we know the row, I can load easily that client data information into the fields. We also have a meeting section here in pink. When I make a selection on a meeting, likewise, I want that meeting ID to show up in B8. Once again, just like before, that meeting ID is also hidden in a column, and that is column Z. And you take a look, this column is already set to custom. If I change it to general, you will see the individual IDs. And if I change the font all to white, you'll see all of them. So there. But we can simply, once again, we can simply hide them by going into the more number formats, going to custom, and changing them to 2 semicolons. So now that we are able to hide them, and we can hide or show the column if we want. So everything else is the same, our next meeting ID and our meeting row. So that's pretty much it. The same as was before. We see if we go down to our meetings, our next meeting ID is 180. So those are the 3 individual fields for our meeting. Next up, I also want some scheduling information. We have our initial week date. Now, why is our start date not showing? Because we want to show the first Sunday after this date. So this is the initial date. I want to show the first Sunday. I also want to show the end date, and I want to show some week text. So that's very important here. So we can show that. In fact, let me just update that. I also have named range that's not quite right. So I have a named range called week start. So this is our week start, and we have our weekend. I'm going to update that text, and this is called weekend. Notice there's named ranges here called weekend, named range called week start. So I had original idea to put the start of the week here and here, but what I'm going to do is I want the text. I want that text to show up in the shape. It's not quite right. So I have one thing, it's called week start. That is the start of our week. And we also have the end date, which is our week end. So I've used a few different dates here, week end, okay? So now it's going to be correct. So now whatever's showing up in this cell and this cell is always going to be here. I want this to be a nice display. So what I need to do is I need to connect this individual shape to a specific cell called B15. Inside cell B15, here we're using the text of the week start, but I want it in this specific format. I want a full day, I want a full month, I want to show a single day, and I want to show all 4 digits of the year. Then a space, then a dash, then I want to show the last day of the week, and just like we did within the original start date. So we can show that format. This gives us a nice format for that. So when we make a change, when I go to previous week, all I need to do is reduce this by 1 week, and then we can keep going and then increase it using the macro. So that's a great way to actually save and update individual weeks, and we can use this inside these named ranges week start. I can also use them inside VBA to help in week end. So what we want to do is we only want those meetings inside this given schedule. So how do we do that? Well, that's going to be with our meeting database. So inside our meeting database, what I want to do is I only want to know the individual meetings for the given week. That means within this week, starting on the 22nd and ending on the 28th. So anything in that range, I want to show. So to do that, we need to use an advanced filter. And we're going to use these 2 dates, week start and week end. And that's going to be inside the meeting database. So we need some specific criteria to run our advanced filter, meaning I want to look for a date that's greater than or equal to the week start, and it must be less than or equal to the week end. We're going to run that through an advanced filter. Those results are going to come here. I'm then going to loop through the results, and then we're going to simply place each one on our CRM. Now to do that, we use a sample shape, and then this sample shape, we then basically duplicate that and place it accordingly. I got plenty of different scheduling. We may not get into the scheduling, but this gives us that modern look because I'm able to use a sample shape. I'm able to tie a macro to the sample shape, then duplicate it. And you see I got to set some limits for the times because they're kind of off, or I could probably just increase the times here. So that's okay. All right, so we kind of get an idea that we're running the advanced filter based on the week start and the week end date, and all those shapes are going to appear in here based on that. Next up, let's get a little bit into this dashboard. Now, the dashboard is going to be really handy because we want to know really quickly the health of our CRM and the clients and how our projects are going. And I want just one look to do that. I've created 2 different tables. This one is called our clients, obviously, and this one is called our meetings. So I have 2 different tables, and we can use those tables inside our formulas. So what I want to do inside our formula is I want to get some information. The first thing what I want to do is I've got individual shapes. Now these individual shapes, this one right here is connected to B19. So that means this March completed projects. I want to show the current month. It's currently March. So how do I get that text? Well, it's going to be right here. If we expand column B just slightly, we see that it says March completed projects. What I really want is the current month. So to do that, I'm going to use the text function. I'm going to use the current day, but I want to format that current day only by the month. That means it returns only the month. So this will get us the current month. and I want and space completed projects. That's going to put the text I want in this cell. Once I do this, all I need to do then is take a shape and then I just connect the cell and then format it accordingly. Great. Now what I want to do is I also want to know what the month revenue is for the current month. I want this, as the month changes, this amount will change automatically. Now, if we take a look inside the client database, what I really want to know is I want to know all the projects amount, but I only want to know those that are completed and only those within the given month. So for example, this one would be included. It's completed. It's currently March 2026. And the amount is $67,500. So that would be included inside that. In fact, that is the only one that is. If we take a look inside the client's database, we see that we have others canceled, in progress in March, pending, and the completed here. Now, if I were to change this date to 3/3, it would automatically up. So let's do, I just had a formula to create a date. If I were to change it to the 3rd, we'd go into the CRM and we would see automatically it is updated. So we see it's very accurate. Now to get that total, we're simply going to use the sum ifs function. What I want to do is I want to know all of the project amounts for the client's database. And I want to know based on a very specific status, and that status must be completed. Also, it has to be completed within the current month. So that is essential. To do that, we want to base it on the client status date. That status date has to be greater than or equal to the first of the current month. To get the current month, we're going to use the date function. We're going to use the current year, meaning the year of today. We're also going to use the month of today. I want the current month and 1, meaning the first day of the month. So that means that our client status date must be greater than or equal to the first of the current month. But it also must be less than or equal to the last day of the current month. And to do that, oops, I moved a little bit too far over here. And to do that, let's drop that down. We want to make sure that in this case, we're going to use the end of month function, meaning we're going to use the same exact date range that I've used before, but this time I'm going to wrap it around EO month, end of month. I want the end of the month of the same date, and then I want 0 months ahead, 0 months back. If I wanted to use next month, it would be 1, previous month -1, but I want 0. That means this is the last day of the month. So once I have that, I can get the total for the month. And then I simply need to just use a shape with a white font and then link it to that individual cell. Also, I want to know monthly revenue. Now, monthly revenue, I've created this bar chart. Of course, we need data for that. And to get that, I've gotten here. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to place the dates, the first date of the current year. To do that, I'm just going to use the first one. I want January, right? So for the first one, we always want January. So how do I get January? If I know it's row 24, I take the row, that's 24, and I subtract 23, and that's going to give us 1. The reason I'm doing that instead of just putting 1 is because I can then drag and drop it down. So then I can just drag it and then just bring it down here, and that's going to put the first of the month for the current year. Next up, what I also want to do is I want to grab the monthly revenue for that given month only. To do that, we're going to use the sum ifs. Once again, we're focused on the project amount, and we also want to know on the project status completed. That's important. But this time I want to base it on a very specific date, and that date is in A24. It must be greater than or equal to the first of that month, which it is already on the first of the month. But I also want it less than or equal to the last day of whatever is in A24. Once again, we're using EO month to do that. And that's going to tell us that we've done 45,000 in January. We've done 127. And I just need to, once again, drag and drop this right down here, and it's going to be accurate for all. So it's much easier. And we see March 144. Once I do that, I simply want to create a bar chart for that. So then I could just highlight the data, insert recommended bar charts or whatever we want. So we can click on all charts. I'm just using this chart here, clicking OK, and then the rest was kind of formatted. And then it's kind of simple on the format, so we don't need to go too much detail on the format, but that's pretty much how I did it. All right, likewise, we also want to know the current day's meetings. So how do I get that? So once again, I want today's meetings. I want to know how many are scheduled. To do that, I simply want to grab this one right here. So in this one, we're going to use the meeting date. I want to count if all the meeting date on the current date. So that's really it. We're using count ifs. I'm counting all of the meeting dates. Once again, it's based on the meeting here and all the dates. So any date that has the current date, we're simply going to count it. And then I want to add an and space scheduled. So then we just have this particular shape here that we've connected to B21, and then we format it accordingly. Once again, we also want meetings by month. And then I've created a line chart here to do that. And here's the data here. Once again, I created the first of the month. And then I also want to track the meetings by month. This time I'm going to use the count ifs. Meetings date greater than or equal A38, which is the first of the month, and also less than or equal the end of the month. I want to count the total meetings in a given month. With January, we had 2, February 3, and so on and so forth. Then I simply want to create a line chart. So I'm simply going to highlight this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert once again, and then we can use a line chart here. And that's exactly what I did. And then I formatted it accordingly. I just got rid of the fill. I got rid of the border, and I just cleaned it up and then formatted. So it's kind of straightforward on that. And I just got rid of almost everything on that except for the line itself. And then I put a glow on top of that. So for example, if I just click here, delete. So we just start deleting as much as we can, pretty much. And the numbers, and then when we add the glow, we can just do this. We can use Control-1. I want to set a color for this line. So I've got a solid line, and we use the default color on this one here. And then I would add in a glow, which is here. And then I'd add this glow, and I'd probably add this color here. So that gives you an idea. And then we just kind of shrunk it down like this. And I did give it a chart title in white. So that's all I did for that. And now we turn our attention to these clients and projects. Of all the projects, I want to know how many are in progress. If we take a look at this shape, it is tied to cell B22. Now, if we drop down and look directly inside that cell B22, we get to a formula that's going to help us determine that. We're using the count if. And I want to count all of those clients with the project status that are equal to the in progress. So that is going to determine that total count using the count if, and it gets us to 11. When we combine that with the text string in progress, we get the full text string, which is what we need. We then just simply tie that text to our shape and then format it accordingly. Also, I want to know the number of clients by type. And inside this donut chart, we can display that. Now, I simply used a very simple pivot table to do just that. So inside our client database, here we see we have a pivot table. And inside this pivot table, we're simply listing all the types, the client types, and then I want to know the count based on ID. So I simply want to know how many IDs here are for business, government. So we have 12 nonprofit, business, and government, and 13 at the individual to get a total of 49 different clients by type. So then I simply created a donut chart based on this. So if we were to insert a donut chart, we can do just that. And then I would format it accordingly, which you kind of know already. So that's kind of it. And then it's just basically removing the background, removing the border, removing whatever we don't need, formatting the text as white, and then giving this each individual one a color according to our theme. And then I just added a glow on the entire shape. So if we take a look here, we can see that I have set a glow here, and I have set a specific color for that glow. And then that gives us the look and feel that we want. So we know that we have 11 clients that are in progress, and we have individual clients by type. I just made an update on the formula. That's why the numbers changed. Inside the bottom section, what I would like to do here is I want to know what upcoming meetings. With this quick look dashboard to help us, we can quickly see all of the meetings that are upcoming. Now I've used the cells in back of this. So you see the shape, these are the cells in back of the shape here that are going to help us to do just that. So inside that, we also want to basically use a certain number of cells. In this case, I have used 8 different rows, whatever the top 8 is, to know what upcoming meetings I have. And I want to sort it by the newest date and the farthest in the future. So we're sorting that. And we simply want to do that using an advanced filter. So basically, I'm looking for any upcoming meetings that include today and after. So to do that, we're going to go into our meetings database, and we're going to use a criteria. So we have a criteria here. So basically anything that's greater than equal to today, and we have a long list. However, I don't want to return a long list. What I want to do is I want to sort it by date, and I only want to show, let's say, the top 8. And then I want to bring this information using VBA into our dashboard here. Okay, likewise, we also have client projects. We're going to do something very similar into client projects. Now, if we take a look inside our client database, I also want to know what the client projects are and the results. And so we've got this here. I want to know any project that is less than or equal today. So I want to know the status that's less than or equal the current day. Why is that? Because those are recent client projects. So basically, I want to know everything that is up until the current day. So everything before that. So to do that, we are going to run another advanced filter. Here is our criteria and here is our results. Once we have the results, what I want to do is I want the oldest first to the newest. So that way we can have all the information available to us. We can sort it in any way possible. We're using that advanced filter, and then we're bringing that into this. I've also used conditional formatting here to represent the different statuses. So if we take a look inside the conditional formatting, we see that we have 3 different colors based on canceled, pending, or complete. And then I also have one for the individual rows, which will display the rows. And the reason that I have that is because if I decide I want to have less data, I don't want to show those rows. So it's very easily. Now, when do we want to update this? I'm going to update this when we run the dashboard, because I didn't put it yet, but I'm going to do it right now as we get into VBA. So there's a macro called dashboard refresh. That's going to take a look at this. And speaking of VBA, now that we've got a rundown, if you do want to customize this application to your own, let me show you around the VBA so you can familiarize and you know how to customize that. And to do that, we're going to go into the Visual Basic Editor, which is the developer here. If you don't have the developer tab, you just simply need to right-click any menu, customize the ribbon, and make sure the developer is selected. Once it is, you can go into the developer and then Visual Basic. Once inside the Visual Basic, we have our different sheets, our client database, our main CRM, and our meeting database, and then our workbook. We have 5 different modules: client macros, we have dashboard macros, we have the meeting macros, we have menu macros, and we have scheduling macros. Now inside the dashboard, we simply have one single macro, and this dashboard refresh is going to refresh every time I go to the menu. So basically, we're grabbing all the meetings using an advanced filter, as of what I mentioned, and then we're grabbing all the clients, just those 2 lists, and we're bringing them in here and here. Once we run it, like I'll do right now, it's going to automatically update that list, as you can see. Now, when do I want that to update? When do I want to run this macro right here? I want to run it when the user selects on the menu. Now, to grab that, we're going to go over the menu macros. The menu macros are pretty much made up of 2 individual macros. One that is going to be able to toggle our menu here, that's going to allow us to expand or shrink it here. So that is the first macro. It is simply called toggle menu. And we're simply going to determine what its current state is and then either reduce it or expand it. And then we're going to create a loop that gradually shrinks or expands that. So the menu item here, this is for the individual selection. Now I have an optional selected menu as long because sometimes I want to run this macro from other macros. And what do I mean by that? And that means, like, let's say I'm on schedule and I want to schedule this meeting. Notice that it's automatically go to meetings, but the user didn't click there, right? The user clicked here. So it's the same action. If I am on the schedule and I click either edit meeting or schedule meeting, it's going to go to meetings. So I have to be able to know which one. This is number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We have 5 different individual buttons. So what we're going to do is I want to know which one was clicked. If I right click individual, we see this is called menu 1, or this is called icon 1. So likewise, to every individual one, I've named it menu 2, icon 2, so on and so forth. Now, if I take away that text with their menu or icon, it's going to leave me with only the number. So what do I mean by take away? We're going to use the application caller. This is the name of the shape. If I take those first left 4 characters and I replace them with nothing using the replace command, it is going to leave me with the menu number. So keep that in mind. That's how we grab the menu number. But that's only if the selected menu is empty. If it is, then we don't need to do this. So what we also want to do is we also want to delete any meeting shapes, because notice on the schedule here, we've got all these shapes. If I switch to a different, I want to remove all those shapes. I only want those shapes to happen when we refresh the schedule. So that's why we're basically going to loop through all the shapes, anything that has meeting, client meeting, any shape that contains that. Notice it's called client meeting 100, which is the ID number. This is called client meeting 105. So we're going to loop through all the entire sheet. Any shapes that contain client meeting, we're simply going to remove them. Now, what we want to do is we're going to fill the selected one with a special gradient, that blue gradient. We are going to hide all of the groups. Remember, each individual had a group except for admin. So we want to hide those groups. And also what we want to do is we want to hide all of the columns. So we're hiding all the columns, we're hiding all, then based on whatever the selected menu item is, we're going to do some things. If it's a dashboard, we are going to show the individual columns, and we're going to show the dashboard group, and we're going to do one more thing, which is run the macro to refresh dashboard. Now, if for any reason, right, you get updated data, if I decide I'm going to clear this, oops, let's not select all of that because not the headers. If I'm going to clear this in and I decide I'm going to go to clients and then back to dashboard again, it's automatically going to be updated because we're now running the macro that's going to update all of this data here. Very good. So basically what we need to do for if it's a dashboard, we're going to do this. If it's clients, we're going to show these individual columns and show the shape group. Once again, if we go into clients, we see that the name of this group is called client group. We want to display that group or hide that group accordingly. So we want to display it. We're simply going to do exactly the same for meetings and the scheduler. The only difference in the schedule, I want to run the macro that's going to refresh the scheduler. And the admin, there's no shapes at all. If we take a look in the admin, there's no shapes at all. It's just simply displaying columns BB all the way through BM or BN or whatever it is, BO. So we're simply displaying the columns. We're going to turn on application screen updating. Very good. Let's get a little bit into some of the other macros. Dashboard we went over. Client and meeting are almost the same. Within the client, we have client load the list. Remember, I want to load the list of clients. This is the list of clients. Oops, we could probably refresh the list, meaning I just deleted some cells. So we can run this macro client list on refresh, although the clients shouldn't change. But we have this list load. Every time we save an update, it's going to refresh the list. If I change it to Windows Service Incorporated, I want to make sure that that automatically gets updated here. So it does. And that's why we're refreshing the list each and every time. Very good. So we understand we want this list to refresh, and that's why we've created a macro. For that, we did go over briefly that list here of that, which is inside our client database, which is right here. Here's the criteria. The criteria is linked to whatever the user is going to put in project cost. So for example, if I put in client name and I put in David here, I want that automatically to come up. In our client database, we need to have some criteria, and then the results are going to come here, and then I'm simply bringing those results into here. That is exactly what our list load is going to do right here. So we're running that advanced filter using U2 through U3, which is right here. This is our advanced filter U2 through U3. And we're just using formulas to do just that. Very good. So we've got that. Now when we refresh names, anytime we add or update or save a client, we want to make sure that we're refreshing the list of names. That is this name right here, this list of names. And I want it alphabetized. And that's important because it is linked to this particular name on the client list. So this data validation list here is that alphabetical list, which we went over earlier. So we want to make sure that that particular list gets automatically updated. The client add new simply clears. The client load, now we want this macro to run when? I want this macro to run when a user makes a selection on one of the item clients here. If there's nothing here, nothing should happen. So that happens on a selection change event between P and Q. That's going to happen directly on the CRM sheet, and we're going to look for the selection change event. And we're focused on columns P to Q. On client selection, as long as there is a value in column P, then what I want to do is I want to take whatever's in column O. Remember that? That is our client ID. I want to take that client ID and I want to place it inside B2. Once it is inside B2, it'll automatically trigger our client row in B3 using a formula. So that's quickly how it easily, and then we simply need to run the macro client load. We do exactly the same for meeting selections, so it's very, very similar. And on client load, all we're going to do is ensure that we have a row in B3, as long as B3 is not empty. We're going to assign it to this variable, and we're going to use data mapping. So these individual cells here, which we have on T5 or W5 or T8 or W8, are simply going to map to the clients. That is where we have them here. T5, W5, T8. So all of these are mapped to the individual cell. I could simply loop from 2 to 10 and take whatever's in that given row and put it inside the fields. And that's what we do right here in this loop. And that's called the client load. When we save or update, I just want to ensure that we actually have a client name. So I want to make sure that T5 does contain a value. If it is empty, we're going to let the user know. And then we're going to determine whether it is a new or an existing client. If B3 is empty, we know it is a new client. We're going to grab our first available row. In fact, we're going to actually use the list objects. I'm going to update this to make sure that we have the right, because we now have a table, so we can use the list objects, and we're going to use our clients, which is the name of that. And what I want to do is I want to determine all the rows. So how do we do that? That is our list rows, and then we want to count them. And then I simply want to add 4 because our first one starts on row 4. Why is that? If we take a look at this, we say the first available one is on row 4 because the first 3 rows are taken. So we want to add the first one. And we're going to do exactly the same for meetings because I added this in. So we're going to do that exactly the same, before I forget, for meetings. When we have a brand new meeting, we are going to do exactly the same. The only difference is that I am going to change this. It is the meeting database. So we're going to change this to our meeting database. And we also want to make sure that it's called meetings. That is the table name that we're going to use, meetings. And how do we know that? Well, we can simply look in here. We can go into the table and we see that this is called clients. We can go into the meetings here, and we can take a look inside the original table here. And once again, we can see that it's called meetings. So we know we've got it right. That's going to ensure that we have the first available row. Continuing on clients, once we have that first available row, we are going to grab that next client ID, and we're also going to take that ID and we're going to put it in column A. And if it's an existing, we're simply going to grab the client row from B3. We're going to loop through, once again, the columns, but this time we're doing the opposite. We're taking whatever's inside our CRM field and we're placing it inside our database. If we're going to schedule a meeting, this is what I mean menu select. Remember, we had inside the menus, we have this called menu select, and we have this optional selected menu. When the user selects a menu item, there's no menu item. There's just the application caller, meaning it's just the name. Our menu number is coming after we remove this. After we remove the menu, it's leaving us with 1. But what about if we want to select the menu item inside our, let's go back here. Here we go. Inside our client schedule meeting. If we remember that inside the clients, and I want to schedule a meeting. So if I'm inside the clients and I want to click schedule meeting, I want it to go directly to the meetings. I want it to go to the third menu item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the menu select, and I'm going to set it to 3. That is our third menu item. That runs the macro. That 3 is optional. If that 3 exists, then we simply need to run that through, and it's automatically going to select that third item. We're going to clear the meeting out, and then we're simply going to take the customer, whichever the customer, meaning if we're on this client here, Sarah Kim, and I want to schedule a meeting for her, I'm going to select here. It's going to put her name directly inside AH. So we want to preemptively put that meeting here, and that's going to do right here. AH5 is going to take on that client name. So it's kind of a nice, handy way to do that. If I want to delete a client, simply want to say, are you sure you want to delete? Yes or no. And then we're simply going to delete the client database row. We're going to refresh the client names. We're going to clear all the fields, and we're going to reload this client list. Now, as far as the meetings are concerned, it's almost identical, so we don't necessarily need to go over it. we're running a list. This is to load our list of meetings, just like we did with clients. It is going to load this individual list here. So that's kind of relatively same. Adding a new is simply going to clear it out. Meeting load, we only have 8 columns this time, but everything else is pretty much the same. Our meetings have already been mapped out to the individual meeting fields inside our CRM. So that is covered. And also when we save an update, we're going to ensure that there's a meeting name and a client. Those are imperative. So we're going to make sure that we have those two. If not, we're going to let the user know. And then once again, if it's a new meeting, we're going to add the first available row in meetings and so on and so forth. And we're going to loop it out once again, just like we did. And we're going to take whatever's inside the range here and place it in the database and then delete. So that's pretty much it. So the scheduling macros, we don't necessarily need to go over that. I have dedicated videos just on the scheduling, but basically all we're doing is mentioned to you already before. We are using our criteria based on our start week date and end week date. We're getting all the results. I'm going to loop through all of these results. For each meeting, I am going to use this sample. I'm going to duplicate this sample meeting and I'm going to pre-fill it in and I'm going to place it on the given schedule in the correct column and at the correct time. All right, very good. Oops, it looks like I deleted some rows, which I shouldn't have, but I think we're good to go now. Okay, so we'll have to make sure you do protect this when you get it. So when I was in the dashboard, and be careful, if I highlight a lot of it and I click delete, it's going to delete some important things, but I think we're good to go now. Very good. So I do hope you have enjoyed this just as much as I've enjoyed bringing you this really cool modern CRM. There's a lot you can do with it. Don't forget, I do have a CRM. I've also got an update on my tool pack that's really awesome. It now contains 12 different features which you can check out now, and it is 10 times faster than it used to be. I got a great deal on that, so I just made that update within the last few days. Make sure you check it out. Grab the new one. I'll include the link down below. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.